So, you're here for the objective review of the Rolex Daytona Cosmograph reference 116500LN. The one we're looking at is the black dial version, and let's get the specifications out of the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Standard Time. So today we're going to do the objective review of the Rolex Daytona. Now this is a really special watch, and it's almost impossible to get this at the AD. So we're pretty much looking at it from the perspective of a $24,000 watch at the grey market, because that's what it sells for. Now our objective review is based on the standard time scale. What is the standard time scale? It's a list of 17 categories by which we rate a watch out of 10. So you can see them on the screen right now. First, we begin with price. We're looking at the grey market price of $24K with this particular watch. We're not looking at the retail price, which is right around $13,500 US dollars, because you literally can't get it at retail, even if you're lucky. So for the price, 3 out of 10. The reason I'm giving it a 3 out of 10 is because 24K is pretty unattainable for most, and it's pretty ridiculous for a stainless steel chronograph made by Rolex. There's nothing more to it. It's a watch. 24K on a watch, just because people really like it now. Bit stupid. 3 out of 10. The next category gets us on to the watch itself. The case diameter and lug to lug. So this particular piece has a case diameter of 40 millimeters. Now that's a perfect size. The lug to lug of this watch is 46.5 millimeters. Also very nice. Really good wrist presence. Wears perfectly on the wrist. I actually haven't worn a chronograph that wears better on the wrist than this piece. So this gets a 10 out of 10. Case. Our next category is case. 9 out of 10 for the case. Why? Like I mentioned, beautiful lug to lug, beautiful case diameter. The case itself has a thickness of 12.5 millimeters, which is really good. It's really thin for an automatic chronograph. Keep in mind, this is automatic and it's a chronograph, and sitting at 12.5 millimeters, that's really good. 9 out of 10 for case. Moving on to the movement. Now, this is a Rolex in-house movement. A fantastic movement. Previously, Rolex used to use the Zenith El Primero movement on the Daytona, but now they've got their own in-house movement, well, at least on the ceramic subs. It's a great movement. It has decent power reserve. It's accurate to Rolex standards, which is +2, -2. That's really great. All of those are really nice things, but there's no pizzazz to it. There's nothing too special about it. It's how Rolex does things. They just do things really well, but they're not too eccentric about it. So movement gets a 7 out of 10. Movement finishing. This category is not applicable here because it has no display case back. So I really don't count movement finishing when a watch doesn't have a display case back, because you can't see it. And in general, we know that Rolex does not finish their movements really well because they're never on display. Next, we go on to the bracelet. Now, the bracelet is an oyster style bracelet. It has polished center links and brushed outer links. Nothing too special because it's there on literally the date just. So it's a pretty common bracelet and pretty standard for Rolex, nothing special, even though this is their Daytona. The bracelet gets an 8 out of 10. Solid bracelet, really nice on the wrist, really nice feel, really nice taper from 20 to 16 millimeters. Really nice, 8 out of 10. And next we get on to the clasp. Now, I don't really like this style clasp on a Daytona. It has a double fold over clasp, and it's not necessary. I think on a diver watch, sure, you want that security, you want that safety, and you really don't want the watch to come off your wrist in the ocean. So I get that. But on a Daytona, on a chronograph, you're never going to take this in the ocean. It's meant for racing, timing, these sort of things. So I think they could have done with a simpler bracelet, just like they have on the Oyster Perpetuals or the Datejust line. It's just a simple push release, or just a simple release clasp. So I'm not a fan of the clasp. Next, we move on to the dial. Now, this is a beautiful watch. There's no two ways about it. It's got fantastic proportions, and that continues in the dial. I really love the sub-dials. I really love the layout. Everything is so clean. The text, frankly, the text is also such a nice factor to the watch. It has quite a few lines of text, but it doesn't seem out of place. And the red Daytona marking, all of it just adds to an overall beautiful aesthetic. So, dial gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Next we move on to the bezel. Now, I love the bezel. The bezel doesn't rotate, but I still love it. This is a chronograph, and typically chronographs don't have a rotating bezel unless they're pilot watches. But this is not that, and it has... I don't actually know how to operate the bezel to calculate speed or not, so I'm not too sure what that tachymeter sort of thing is meant for. But just looking at it, the ceramic bezel is absolutely beautiful. I love the thickness of it. It sits above the watch with an angle that really helps the stance of the entire watch and the wrist, and it makes the piece bigger than it actually is. It adds to the overall wearing experience, and it's fantastic. So the bezel from me gets a solid 10 out of 10. I love it. Next we move on to the crystal. Nothing too special here, nothing really to remark. It's a typical Rolex crystal. The anti-reflective coating is not that great. I'm not even sure what kind of anti-reflective coating they use, whether it's on both sides or single layer. I've heard some people say that Rolex doesn't use anti-reflective coating, but I've seen a lot worse watches in terms of reflection, so I think they maybe use something, not too sure about that. It's a nice crystal, like the Rolex crown, kind of lasered onto it, and you'd have to really look to see it at the 6 o'clock marker. That's a beautiful touch. So crystal gets an 8 out of 10, nothing too special. Now the hands of the watch. Our next category is hands. I'm not the biggest fan of these hands. Sure, they're nice, they're precise, it's something different to a regular cut hand, but I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan, and if you look at it really closely, the finishing is good, but it's no Zerato finishing, and you get much better hands from Grand Seiko. So the hands get a 7 out of 10. Our next category is lume. Now, the hands are so thin and the markers are so thin also, but they still have lume, which doesn't make all that much sense to me. I think they could have just done away with the lume, but some people do like it, so I guess it's alright. It gets a 4 out of 10, it's really not that great. The crown. Rolex crowns are typically really beautiful. Really good action. I love the tactile feel of the crown. It's so solid when you pull it out into the positions. There isn't any play at all, and there's a fair amount of resistance when you want to set the time, which I really like. I don't like the loose time setting where the hands just swing all over the place, and the action on winding it is so beautiful and feels very nice. It's just very nice. The crown gets a 9 out of 10 for those reasons. Next we go on to the lugs. Now the entire case is so beautiful, and the lugs just accentuate that. Really, really beautiful lugs. A lug to lug of 46.5 millimeters. That's actually really small for a chronograph. For a watch that's 40 millimeters across in diameter, that's actually quite a small lug to lug, and that means more people can wear it, and it sits on the wrist so much better. So I really like the lugs. The lug width is 20 millimeters. Very standard. Throw on a NATO. I don't know. If you want to, you could throw on a NATO, on a Daytona, sure. Gets a 9 out of 10 from me, the lugs. Next category is weight. This watch sits so perfectly on the wrist. It's not too heavy, it's not too light. The oyster bracelet with that taper really helps manage the weight of the watch. The watch itself is quite solid, so it has a little bit of heft to it. You can see the grams on the screen if that means something to you. But I really like the weight of this watch. I think it suits it really well. Gets a 9 out of 10 from me. Tactility. This is one of the most important criteria for me. I really, really care about how a watch feels in the hand. And everyone should care. I'm sure everyone does care, but this is one of the major things for me, particularly when it comes to assessing a watch and whether I would wear it and whether I like it. This watch is so perfect on the wrist. I've said it too many times already, but it really took me by surprise. For a chronograph, I was not expecting it to be so nice on the wrist, and that's pretty much it. So, 9 out of 10. Everything feels so beautiful to touch. The screw down crown is great. The screw down pushers even better. Where the click action when you let that chronograph run, it's so tactile and so beautiful, and it's so satisfying. Same goes for when you stop the chronograph. Fantastic. Our last category is water resistance. Now, this is not really important to the Daytona. The Daytona was never meant to be a diver, was not meant to go in water. It's a racing chronograph watch. It still has got 100 meters of water resistance, which is better than the Speedmaster's 50, because frankly 50 on any watch these days is quite poor. So nothing special here, nothing much to remark, not something you should even care about on this watch, but 100 meters is decent, and that gets a 5 out of 10. So that's it, categories covered. Now you can take a look at the screen, and here's the final score out of 100. Keep in mind I removed movement finishing, so that does not impact the score. So that's pretty much it for the objective review of the Rolex Daytona Cosmograph. Let me know in the comments how you like it. What do you think about the score? What do you think about the different categories? Just anything to do with the watch, drop it down in the comments. I'm going to read it, I'm going to respond. So thank you guys for watching. See you guys next video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check us out on Instagram @StandardTimeInsta. You can see more content there. Thank you guys for watching. See you next video. Cheers.